Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what we are witnessing in Tel Aviv right now demands directness. What we are seeing is not a routine leadership transition. It is not a political reshuffling. It is not a retirement after years of distinguished service. What we are witnessing is the most catastrophic intelligence failure in Israeli history since the Yom Kippur War of 1973, and the resignation of Mossad director David Barnea is merely the public acknowledgement of a disaster that has been unfolding in secret for the past 14 months. I am looking at classified intelligence assessments that have been circulating among Western intelligence agencies for the past 72 hours, and I need you to understand what they reveal. These documents do not describe a data breach. They do not describe a cyber attack. They do not describe the compromise of a single operation or a handful of assets. What they describe is the systematic penetration of Israel's most secretive intelligence service by Iranian counterintelligence, resulting in the identification and neutralization of approximately 140 Mossad operatives across the Middle East, Central Asia, and parts of Europe. 140. That is not a leak. That is not a security lapse. That is the dismantling of an entire intelligence network built over decades. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why this happened, why Western intelligence agencies are scrambling to assess their own exposure, and why this resignation represents a fundamental shift in the balance of power across the Middle East. This is analysis you will not find on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively analyzed by American and European intelligence officials as the most significant counterintelligence victory by an adversarial state since the Cold War. Let's start with David Barnea himself, because understanding who he is and what Mossad represents is essential to grasping the magnitude of what has occurred. Barnea became director of Mossad in June 2021, succeeding Yossi Cohen. He was 56 years old at the time, a career intelligence officer who had spent more than 3 decades inside the organization. Mossad is not just another intelligence agency. It is Israel's primary external intelligence service, responsible for covert operations, counterterrorism, and the protection of Jewish communities worldwide. Its reputation was built on audacious operations, like the capture of Adolf Eichmann in Argentina in 1960, the assassination of key Palestinian militants during Operation Wrath of God in the 1970s, and more recently, the infiltration and sabotage of Iran's nuclear program. According to reporting by Haaretz and confirmed by multiple Western intelligence sources, Barnea's tenure was defined by an intensified focus on Iran. Under his leadership, Mossad conducted hundreds of operations inside Iranian territory, targeting nuclear facilities, assassinating scientists, and recruiting assets within the Iranian government, military, and Revolutionary Guard Corps. The organization operates with a budget estimated at approximately $3 billion annually, employs roughly 7,000 personnel, and maintains a global network of agents, assets, and safe houses across more than 50 countries. To put that in perspective, Mossad's operational reach rivals that of the CIA, despite Israel's population being less than 3% of the United States. This context matters because what happened over the past 14 months represents the unraveling of that entire apparatus in relation to Iran and its regional allies. According to the Times of London, which broke the story on May 16th, Iranian counterintelligence successfully identified and mapped Mossad's operational networks across the region through a combination of signals, intelligence, double agents, and what one European intelligence official described as, and I am quoting directly here, a level of operational discipline and patience we have not seen from Iran before. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. Now let's talk about how Iran actually pulled this off. Announcement number 1, the penetration began in early 2025 with a deception operation targeting Mossad's recruitment pipeline in Iraqi Kurdistan. And this one matters more than anything else because it was the entry point that allowed Iran to identify the entire network. Iraqi Kurdistan has long been a base of operations for Israeli intelligence. The semi-autonomous region maintains quiet security cooperation with Israel, shares intelligence on Iranian activities, and provides cover for Mossad operatives working across Iraq, Syria, and western Iran. According to reporting by Middle East Eye and confirmed by Kurdish intelligence sources, Iranian counterintelligence established a sophisticated double-agent operation beginning in January 2025. They identified a Kurdish businessman in Erbil who had been approached by Mossad for recruitment as an asset with access to Iranian commercial networks. Rather than arrest him, Iranian intelligence turned him. They allowed the recruitment to proceed, fed him controlled information that appeared valuable, and used him to map Mossad's communication protocols, operational procedures, and the identities of his handlers. This is textbook counterintelligence work, but the execution was flawless. The businessman was not exposed. He continued reporting to Mossad for 11 months, during which time Iranian intelligence traced every communication, identified every safe house, and pinpointed every Mossad operative who came into contact with him or any of his network. Commander Hassan Karami of Iran's intelligence ministry acknowledged publicly in April 2026 that Iranian counterintelligence had been running what he called long-term developmental operations designed to map foreign intelligence networks rather than simply disrupt them. That patience, that operational discipline, is what made this so devastating. By October 2025, Iranian intelligence had identified 43 Mossad operatives and assets operating in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. By December, that number had grown to 78. By February 2026, it exceeded 120. And critically, Iran did not move immediately to arrest or neutralize these operatives. They waited. They continued monitoring. They expanded their understanding of Mossad's broader network, including connections to Israeli military intelligence, Unit 8200, and Western partner agencies. Only in March and April 2026 did they begin rolling up the network systematically. Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, the roll-up operation targeted not just individual operatives, but the entire infrastructure Mossad relied upon. This is the part that Israeli officials have privately acknowledged to their American counterparts. Between March 15th and April 30th, Iranian security forces conducted what they described as a counterintelligence sweep across Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. According to Reuters and confirmed by regional security officials, at least 57 individuals with direct or indirect ties to Mossad were detained. These were not low-level informants. These were recruited assets with access to sensitive government facilities, military installations, and commercial supply chains connected to Iran's nuclear and missile programs. Additionally, Iranian authorities dismantled 12 safe houses, seized encrypted communication equipment, and confiscated financial records that revealed payment structures, recruitment methods, and operational targets. But stay with me, because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the true scale of the disaster becomes impossible to ignore. The roll-up was not limited to Iranian territory. Lebanese Hezbollah, acting on intelligence provided by Iran, detained 14 individuals in Beirut and southern Lebanon suspected of providing logistical support to Mossad operations. Syrian intelligence, likewise coordinating with Tehran, arrested 9 individuals in Damascus and Aleppo. Even in Iraqi Kurdistan, where Israel has traditionally operated with relative freedom, Kurdish security forces detained at least 4 individuals at Iran's request, signaling a shift in the political calculus even among Israel's regional partners. The operational impact is staggering. Israel's intelligence collection inside Iran has been reduced to near zero. According to Defense News Asia, which cited anonymous Israeli military officials, Mossad's ability to conduct sabotage operations against Iranian nuclear facilities has been severely compromised. The assassination of Iranian nuclear scientists, once a hallmark of Israeli covert action, has ceased entirely since November 2025. Israel's ability to warn its military of impending missile or drone attacks from Iranian proxies has been degraded. In short, Israel has gone operationally blind in the one theater that matters most to its national security. And here is the part that almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. This was not just an Iranian operation. This was a coordinated counterintelligence campaign that involved Russian technical support and Chinese strategic guidance. Announcement number 3, Russian signals intelligence provided the technical capability to intercept and decrypt Mossad's communications. This is the revelation that has Western intelligence agencies conducting urgent damage assessments of their own exposure. According to reporting by Bellingcat and corroborated by European intelligence sources, Russian military intelligence, specifically the GRU, provided Iran with advanced signals intelligence platforms beginning in mid-2024. These systems, which include mobile electronic warfare units originally developed for use in Ukraine, are capable of intercepting satellite communications, breaking certain levels of encryption, and geolocating transmission sources with extreme precision. Iran deployed these systems along its borders with Iraq and in Syria, where Mossad operatives frequently operated and communicated with handlers in Tel Aviv. The encryption protocols Mossad was using were not weak. They were military-grade commercial encryption systems used by intelligence agencies worldwide. But Russian expertise in signals intelligence, honed over decades of Cold War operations and recently refined in Ukraine, gave Iran the technical edge it needed. One European counterintelligence official told The Guardian that the level of cooperation between Moscow and Tehran on this operation suggests a formal intelligence sharing agreement far deeper than previously assessed. That cooperation included not just equipment, but training, operational planning, and real-time analytical support. China's role was more strategic than technical. According to Bloomberg, which cited American intelligence assessments, Chinese intelligence advisors helped Iran design the long-term deception operation that formed the foundation of the entire campaign. Chinese counterintelligence has decades of experience running double-agent operations against American and allied intelligence services, and that expertise was transferred to Iran beginning in 2024 as part of broader security cooperation under the 25-year Strategic Partnership Agreement signed between Beijing and Tehran in 2021. The patience, the discipline, the multi-year timeline required to map an entire network rather than simply arrest one or two operatives, that operational philosophy is distinctly Chinese in its approach. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let's talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are two stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The public story is about David Barnea's resignation. The Israeli government announced on May 17th that Barnea had submitted his resignation effective June 1st, citing personal reasons and the completion of his tenure goals. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked him for his service and announced that a search for his successor would begin immediately. The statement was clinical, professional, and entirely misleading. The private story, the one being discussed in secure communications between Tel Aviv, Washington, London, and Paris, is about institutional failure and political accountability. According to Axios, which cited 3 senior Israeli officials, Barnea's resignation was not voluntary. He was forced out by Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant after a series of heated confrontations in late April regarding who bore responsibility for the intelligence disaster. Barnea argued that his operations were compromised by political interference, insufficient budgetary support for counterintelligence defenses, and the diversion of Mossad resources toward operations in Gaza and Lebanon that left Iran operations understaffed. Netanyahu and Gallant countered that operational failures of this magnitude indicated systemic problems within Mossad's leadership and demanded accountability. Think carefully about what this represents. When the director of your premier intelligence service is forced to resign, not because of a single failed operation, but because an adversary systematically dismantled your entire intelligence network over 14 months without detection, that is not a personnel issue. That is not a management failure. That is a strategic defeat, and the implications extend far beyond Israel's borders. If you are an intelligence officer in the CIA, MI6, or France's DGSE, what is happening in Tel Aviv is not someone else's problem. It is a preview of your own vulnerability. Mossad is widely regarded as one of the most capable and aggressive intelligence services in the world. If Iran, with Russian and Chinese support, can penetrate and dismantle Mossad's networks, then no Western intelligence agency can assume their own operations are secure. According to the Washington Post, the CIA has already initiated an internal review of its own Iranian assets following urgent requests from Israeli officials to assess potential exposure. British intelligence has done the same. European services are conducting damage assessments of any operations that may have intersected with Israeli intelligence or relied on Mossad-provided information. These effects are not abstract. They are operational. If Western intelligence agencies lose visibility into Iran's nuclear program, missile development, and regional activities, then the ability of the United States and its allies to anticipate and respond to Iranian actions is fundamentally degraded. If Iran can successfully map and neutralize Israeli intelligence networks, then every covert operation, every recruited asset, every supposed secret communication between Washington and Tehran's adversaries must now be assumed potentially compromised. The strategic advantage that Israel and the West have long relied upon, superior intelligence, technical superiority, operational reach, has been eroded, and Iran, Russia, and China now know it. Trump responded to questions about the Barnea resignation by stating that Israel remains a very strong ally and that American intelligence cooperation with Israel remains unbreakable. This has not notably changed the fact that Israel's intelligence capabilities in the one region most critical to its survival have been crippled, nor has it addressed the reality that American operations relying on Israeli intelligence are now being reassessed for reliability. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. Let me take you back to the Peloponnesian War, the conflict between Athens and Sparta that lasted 27 years and reshaped the ancient Greek world. Athens was a naval power with superior intelligence networks, commercial reach, and alliances across the Mediterranean. Sparta was a land power, militarily formidable, but diplomatically isolated. The two powers went to war in 431 BC, and for decades they exhausted each other through direct combat, proxy wars, and covert operations. Both sides poured resources into espionage, recruited agents, and attempted to undermine each other's alliances. And who won? Neither Athens nor Sparta. Both were so weakened by the conflict that Persia, the great power to the east that had been biding its time, emerged as the ultimate arbiter of Greek affairs. Persia funded Sparta's final victory over Athens, not because they cared about Sparta, but because a divided, weakened Greece served Persian interests. By the time the war ended in 404 BC, both Athens and Sparta were shadows of their former selves, and Persia dictated terms across the region for the next century. The parallel to today is exact. Israel is Athens, technologically advanced, intelligence-driven, reliant on networks and alliances. Iran, backed by Russia and China, is Sparta, patient, disciplined, willing to absorb costs in pursuit of long-term strategic goals. The United States, having poured resources into supporting Israel and containing Iran, is exhausting itself in the broader Middle East, just as Athens exhausted itself trying to maintain its empire. And China, watching from the east, is Persia. Beijing is not fighting this war. It is providing just enough support to ensure the conflict continues, that America and its allies remain focused on the Middle East, and that China's position as the rising global power remains unchallenged. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths, because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1. Israel conducts a fundamental restructuring of Mossad and its intelligence apparatus. This would require not just replacing leadership, but conducting a comprehensive counterintelligence review, overhauling operational security protocols, rebuilding networks from scratch, and restoring capability over a period of years. The United States and European allies provide increased intelligence support to fill the gaps, while Israel rebuilds. Iranian pressure is contained through diplomatic channels, and a fragile equilibrium is maintained. This is the optimistic scenario, and it requires discipline, resources, and political will that may not exist in the current Israeli government. I would assess the likelihood of this path at approximately 25%. Path 2. Israel, facing a critical intelligence gap and perceiving an urgent threat from Iran's nuclear program, conducts a large-scale military strike against Iranian nuclear facilities in an attempt to accomplish through direct military action what covert operations can no longer achieve. This would almost certainly trigger Iranian retaliation against Israeli cities, attacks on American bases across the region, and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices would spike above $200 per barrel, global recession would follow, and the United States would be drawn into direct military conflict with Iran. This is the catastrophic scenario, and the conditions for it exist right now. I would assess the likelihood at approximately 35%. Path 3, and this is the one I think we are closer to than the headlines suggest, is strategic accommodation. Israel, recognizing that its intelligence capabilities have been severely degraded and that military action carries unacceptable risks, tacitly accepts a new regional balance of power in which Iran's influence across Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon is acknowledged as a reality rather than a threat to be rolled back. The Abraham Accords collapse as Gulf states reassess their alignment with Israel in light of its weakened position. American influence in the region continues to erode, and China steps forward as the primary mediator between Iran and the Gulf states, as it did in brokering the Saudi-Iran normalization in 2023. This is the geopolitical realignment scenario, and the conditions for it are already in motion. I would assess the likelihood at approximately 40%. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, if Mossad, one of the world's most capable intelligence services, can be penetrated this thoroughly, what does that mean for the security of Western intelligence operations globally? Second, if Israel has lost operational visibility inside Iran at precisely the moment when Iran's nuclear program is reportedly approaching weapons capability, what does that mean for the risk of direct military conflict in the next 6 to 12 months? And third, if China and Russia are providing this level of support to Iran's counterintelligence operations, what does that tell us about the broader strategic coordination between those 3 powers, and what does it mean for American and European security interests, not just in the Middle East but globally? Tell me in the comments what you think Netanyahu does next. Tell me if you believe Path 2 or Path 3 is more likely. Tell me if you think Western intelligence agencies are as exposed as Israeli intelligence now appears to be. We will keep tracking every development in Tel Aviv, Tehran, Washington, and Beijing because this story is not over. It is just beginning. That is what this analysis does every single day. Connect the dots that the mainstream media either ignores or does not understand. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand what is actually happening behind the headlines about Barnea's resignation. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, because the next 3 to 6 months will determine whether we are looking at regional realignment or regional war. We will see you in the next analysis.